let's do it.
All right, we are recording.
Okay, I'll dive in. Hey everybody, and thanks so much for joining us for webinar number 2 for the Anti-Racist Writing Assessment Ecologies grant. We're going to be looking at, I mentioned this just briefly a minute ago, we're going to be looking at some specific questions regarding applying for the grant and its activities. And we're mostly going to spend a lot of today in Q&A. We'll be doing some breakout rooms with specific questions in the latter portion of this presentation. One more time, well, no, that's a lie. I shall again post this slide deck and the question doc, and I'll pop that up again in a few minutes for folks who are joining us new. So first off, let me just say this. Our intention is to have you kind of collect your questions as we go. And that's that link to the question doc that I just put in the chat as well. It might be a good idea just to open this doc up right now. What you'll see is a table with a spot for your name, for the question, and then a gray column that Jeff will use in a moment. As the presentation proceeds, add your questions in here along with your name. The inimitable Jeff Klossman will curate and organize as we're going. And then at breakout time, we'll add you to a group based on your questions. So we'll have one or two members of our core team in each group helping to facilitate the conversation, but we're trying to get you together based on topic. As I go too, if you have any like immediate questions, things that you need help with right now, just pop your hand up and I'll try to get to them. But any larger questions, please just pop them in the doc. If you grab this document yourself, you'll find these 4 links. We try to leave kind of a rabbit trail of documents so that from any documents that you found, you can get to the other stuff that you need. This page includes links to a brief description of the grant itself, a list of the guiding principles, the labor-based application, and the grant activities. We're going to be spending a lot of time in today's session looking at the application itself and at the grant activities. And the major reason for that is that in our previous episode, we spent a lot of time looking at those guiding principles. We introduced the core team, the folks that have been working on developing this grant. We read over the guiding principles. We talked through how these principles evolved and how they led us to slow our process down. And then Asao led us in an anti-racist reading practice involving taking a breath, reading, investigating now, and then locating back, trying to find why the reactions we might have to challenging ideas are there. This time through, though, we'll be laying out the basics of the application process itself. We also want to address a few questions that we've heard from folks beginning to apply for this, especially about the application process and about team composition. And then, as I said, we'll be splitting into breakouts for specific questions. Before we begin, just 2 notes on labor and on community. Labor is a word that we've used a lot. The application process itself is called the labor-based application process. And we wanted to talk a little bit about why. Especially in anti-racist work, there's no such thing as a quick fix. Instead, we all individually and collaboratively need to do a process of deeper reflection. This is challenging and it should be challenging. And there's real work involved. We would like this process to begin that work, even the application process itself. We want this application to give your team starting points for reflection and to fit to your community. It should be work, it should be reflection, and it should be inquiry. It should allow you to decide where this work is leading you and what in your community you might need to address. Let me dive into this a little bit more. So this is an example that has come up in some of our conversation. What if folks encounter problems with the application? What if there are steps that they don't feel that they can provide, data they can't access, or data that they're afraid to access because of their campus climate? If that happens, let's say the faculty demographic data or for the student gap data, if you can't get it because of data gathering problems, because of the campus climate, then it's a good idea to talk about that in the application itself. Analyze the obstacle and discuss the impact it might have on the further work. Because after all, if you're encountering this problem now, just as you're filling out the application, chances are it's going to continue to be a problem as you work towards anti-racist campus reform. Let this application start the job of creating real anti-racist change by highlighting what the challenges are as you find them. So, saying that, it's probably a good idea just to actually look at the application process itself. If you click on that link, this is the document that'll pull up. Excuse me as I adjust. And just to check, is that appearing okay for you all over there? Okay, awesome. This was designed, I want to say primarily by Sal with all of our feedback, with all of our ideas, but it was his idea to really make the application process part of beginning the work itself. And it's a 9-page document. I'm not going to read you through word by word, obviously. I will definitely put this link in the chat. Thank you.
Ian, while you're doing that, I realized that I forgot to have you turn on captions.
Okay.
If you hover down below your screen, you should see a little pop-up kind of floaty bar, and it should have CC on it. I'm sorry.
Thank you for reminding me. Sorry about that. I am, let's see.
Oh, actually, sorry, you need to be in slide to do it. So
okay,
go back to slide. I apologize. Okay. Thank you everyone for your patience.
Yeah, I'll hit it when I get back over to the slide. Is that okay?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So the link to the grant application is there. I'll leave it to you to read through some of this, but there are some points that we want to hit. You know, as we mentioned before, our intention here is for each team to have 4 members, 2 folks of color, and 2 white identified representatives. And here we go into a little bit more of why on that. In the process itself, we've done a time breakdown of 12 to 18 hours. I know that other teams have estimated potentially more work for this, depending on variabilities such as how long it takes to track down the data and team interactions. The first thing that you'll have to do is really plan how to do this successfully, reading through the doc and making some decisions about who's going to make the data asks and how you're going to be pulling together to have these conversations. For the data, we're asking for information on your students, on your courses, on your faculty. And there's a table down below to fit this information in. A lot of it is about demographics, about success rates, retention rates, and placement rates as well. For the courses, we're looking at how often students are placed in various courses, how are they placed, and what are the different placement rates that you have for different demographic groups. And for your faculty, you know, the basic question is, how well does your faculty population match up with your student population? Thinking about origin, race, kinds of Englishes taught, and curriculum. We've provided these tables here, broken down by category to help you with this data gathering and this reflection. Right here, I want to pause though, because one thing that tends to happen to us as instructors is when we see instructions, when we see a table, we really want to do it right. And we get worried that we might not be doing it correctly. I want to pull you back to some of the advice that we gave just earlier, which is, even though this is highly structured, ideally, it should lead the conversation that helps you best analyze your own institution. So if something here is not really fitting with the questions that you need to ask, well, please feel free to modify this. Let this be a tool of deeper reflection, and go ahead and actively shift it so that it helps you as much as possible to start these conversations. We also have tables for faculty here as well, diving into aspects of identity, race, gender, birthplace, employment status, etc. After you've gathered the information, it's going to be important to pull together and discuss the findings as a team. What do you notice? What's interesting to you? What jumps out to you? And from there, go into the writing process. We've got a number of things that we'd like to hear about. All of these are based in reflection, and this is very much part of that discussion of labor. Now that you have some information in front of you, what does your reflection tell you about it? What do you note about your institution? What do you note about your students? What do you note about your classes? And what does this tell you about the steps that you need to take going forward? As you go down, what you'll eventually find is about 1,350 words in total. Now, most of us are English faculty, and so it will be easy to hit on, it'll be easy to hit 1,350 and might be hard to keep it beneath that. Please try to keep it at this amount, just in terms of readability and useful reflection. I want to jump back to the main presentation now and take it from here over to what we'll actually be doing in the grant. And again, I'll add this URL to the chat so that you all can access it. Give me just a second for that to pop up. There's a couple things that we would like to point out about the grant activities themselves. So we've got this divvied up fall, winter, spring, and next fall, with this year being this year of planning, of announcement, of application, and then the main work happening winter, spring, and next fall. The kind of work involves things called backpack seminars, which are presentations of content by a SAO, communities of inquiry, and communities of inquiry are the, let me just scroll down here, yep. Are one of the two groups that you'll be meeting in. By design, and the reason why we're designing this with participants of 4, split up so highly by demographics, is so that we basically have 2 kinds of teams. Teams from the college working on production of the artifacts, and communities of inquiry based around identity that have a chance for deeper reflection together in community, examining the issues coming up. Again, if we just make a bunch of stuff, we're not quite sure that this is really going to be successful. There needs to be reflection built deep into the process itself. So there will be 2 kinds of teams meeting, and that's why that team of 4 structure is so crucial. It's really going to help us divide up more evenly into these communities of inquiry as well. We've got approximate times listed out here, as well as outcomes and approximate amounts of time invested there at the bottom. So go back to the webinar now, and let me go ahead. Jen, thank you for reminding me about the captions. And I apologize for not getting those up sooner. Let's just keep going.
I guess I just say really quickly, it's something that it's an accessibility piece that I am trying to make internalized and habit, and I just haven't gotten there yet. So thank you for being so gracious. Yeah, no, it's a good reminder for me as well, that like having the captions on helps out a lot of folks, you know. The next bit here is talking about coordinating with other DEI and student success initiatives. There's been a lot of excitement about this grant. It's a statewide project. There's actually some money here, and that's pretty cool. But we want to make sure that you know that we're not the only show in town. In fact, there's a whole lot going on right now with anti-racist work, with diversity, equity, and inclusion across the Washington CTC system. And it's crucial to us to say that a lot of this work is being carried out by longtime leaders who have had a lot of skin in the game and have been doing this work a lot longer than, I'll speak for myself, much longer than I have, with more expertise, with more experience. One example of that is the DEI in Washington CTC's initiative. There are several subgroups of this larger group, such as DEI in instruction and Black support and solidarity. And this is another spot where we would like to provide you a link so that you have information on this. Give me just a second here to get the link up.
and to get it into the chat. I'm proud to say that Vic Bahal of my own Green River has been a major force in organizing this, and Amanda Chin, also of Green River, if I can toot my institution's horn, has been working tirelessly to keep these activities moving. There are also groups, initiatives, and leaders at each institution. Guided Pathways itself continues to roll out. And though we've been having some talks about the extent to which anti-racist principles are explicitly part of Guided Pathways, it is our feeling that they can be made so, and that will probably feature in a future discussion. Therefore, teams on this grant shouldn't be competing with those who are already leading. We don't want this grant to steal energy, funding, or attention from all of the work that's already been happening at the state or at your own institutions. And another question that we'd really like you to consider is how your team's effort could coordinate with and further support the work that's already happening, not eclipse it, and not take all the air out of the room. How can you work with faculty at your campus who aren't part of this grant also this year in order to carry out the larger work? These teams are going to be relatively small, only teams of 4, and there might be a whole lot more demand at your institution than there are spaces available. Well, this grant isn't the only work. How can your team engage those faculty interested in participating in these conversations while this work is going on? And lastly, if you can't participate in this effort this time around, what other opportunities for leadership are available? Please keep this in mind as we're working. Ideally, this grant helps to coordinate and support and not dwarf or silence all of the excellent work that's already happening. With that note, a couple reasons why it might be a good idea to apply. We're going to carry out a self-conscious and deliberate process of careful anti-racist reflection on the nature of your institution, who it serves, who serves in that place, and your roles in it all. There will be also careful and reflective thinking about the racism that needs countering in writing courses, departments, and in pedagogies. And obviously, we'll be presenting opportunities to engage in anti-racism assessment ecologies that can transform your own teaching, your department, and your students' lives. We believe really strongly in this, and we are excited and hopeful for what these new innovations might bring to the SBCTC system, to English programs, to English 101 especially. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague Dutch, who's going to talk a little bit more about what benefits there might be of the application process for overall program assessment.
Thanks, Ian. Hey, everybody. I see lots of familiar names in the participant list, but if I don't know you, my name is Dutch Henry, and I'm honored to work at Shoreline Community College in English. Couple of things we wanted to touch on. The first is, while we didn't design it intentionally this way, we realize now that the labor-based application process is an incredible opportunity for individuals and departments to do program review in ways that are profoundly enlightening for you in your specific department on your campus. I don't know about you, but I've spent time over the years working on different types of program review required by the institution that often doesn't really help us very much or teach us much about what we're doing in our department. We think this one will. We think that it has the opportunity to provide tremendous opportunities for professional learning for those who work on the grant, we're so focused on our own classes and our own students that we don't often know what's happening sort of campus-wide in our programs. So to spend time reflecting on the types of Englishes that are being taught and the way that is happening, and using that to learn about students across campus and across our programs and how we can serve them better with a specific focus on anti-racism and equitable outcomes, we think is a tremendous opportunity. We're committed to this idea that it would benefit all of the individuals who work on the grant application, all of the individuals in the department, and your program as a whole, and ultimately your students to be doing this work. The other thing we wanted to touch on is that, again, we realize this is a lot of work, and we're anticipating that we will receive more applications than we have spots for and money to support. And so we are actively discussing how to continue to support departments who aren't selected, because we feel like you might end up in a place where you want to continue the work even if you don't get the grant. And if that is the case, we are going to figure out how, given limited resources, to provide support and facilitation if you desire it, or whatever resources your department might need or want to continue the work. And we will be figuring that out as we move forward, but we wanted to let you know that we're not simply going to sort of turn you away and send you on your way. We're here to do this for as many students as we can, so we will work forward on that. So thanks, Ian.
Well, thank you, Dutch. We want to, before we jump over to your questions, we want to hit one more spot where a lot of questions appeared initially. Why teams of 4? Why 2 self-identified folks of color and 2 self-identified white folks? And can adjunct faculty participate? For the teams of 4, I just want to kind of take us back to the grant activities. Right now, that's mapping out into the college teams and the inquiry teams pretty well if your team has 4 people on it. The 2 and 2 split goes for that reason, but there's deeper reasoning behind it as well. We mentioned it during our last session, but I think it's worth mentioning again. First off, we wanted to make sure that the voices and the input and the leadership of people of color were explicitly included. Acknowledging that this grant is also access to money, access to professional development, potential access to better jobs, connections. In other words, a whole lot of goods of value. We also wanted to open up spots for folks of color, recognizing that white people often have more access to these benefits than people of color do. We wanted white people to be included as well, so that this didn't fall solely upon the shoulders of people of color, which is often the case with anti-racist activity like this. And people of color are in fact hired at institutions to fix the problem of racism, allowing white people to kind of go merrily on their way and not really worry about the issues anymore at all. So we got this 2 and 2 split to try to mitigate both of those issues and to provide rich communities for people outside of their college teams to reflect upon the impact of this work on themselves. Lastly, we've had some questions about adjunct faculty. We wanted to talk about those explicitly as well. Many institutions were asking if adjunct faculty could participate. And we wanted to flip that question around to say, this is another aspect of power. This grant, again, it's access to money, it's access to professional development, it's access to items on a CV that could lead adjunct faculty to a better job down the road. And in many institutions, my own included, adjunct faculty are the majority of the population of those teaching English courses. In the interests of equity, in the interests of power, we think it's crucial that adjunct faculty participate in this program. And so as you're constructing your team, think about all of those aspects of power. Often there are more faculty of color among the adjunct ranks than there are among the full-time ranks as well. So as you're constructing your team, you've got access to a whole lot of goods, tradable. And how are you going to distribute those goods with an eye toward equity? All right. At this point, I want to pause and give you a little bit more time to collect your questions together. Take a few moments to add additional questions to the question doc here. Don't forget to add your name. And then on the back end, Jeff is going to be curating, categorizing, and then crafting up categories into breakout rooms. We've got some members of our core team here in the presentation today, and each of us will be facilitating some of those conversations in each of the breakout rooms. By the way, you'll have a chance to visit more than one breakout room if you like. Before we pause, I just want to tell you a bit about the breakout rooms. We'll assign you to a breakout room based on your questions. If you'd like to visit more than one, just come back to the main room. Jen will be there and she can assign you to a new one. And we'll have the list of rooms available here on the main slide when it's time to go into the breakouts. Right now though, what I'd like to do is to repost that link to the question doc. And just give folks, let's just pause for about 5 minutes to give folks a chance to write in their own questions so that we can assemble those breakout rooms.
Hey, Ian, this is Jen. I was just going to say, Jeff has sorted the sessions. And so maybe if you go to that, I'll update it. And then possibly Jeff could just talk about the categories that he has identified.
Let's give, before we start talking about the questions, let's give folks just a couple more minutes to fill in some questions.
Absolutely.
And then we'll have a look. And also, thank you, Jeff. we've got a couple folks finishing up some questions, but Jeff, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you as those folks are finishing up, just so you can talk us through the breakout rooms that are developing here.
Hey everybody, Jeff Klossman from Whatcom. I think, looking at everybody's questions here, that 5 breakout rooms would work. And let's see, I'll put them in the chat for everybody. Is that okay, Jen?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
It looks like, yeah, my presentation isn't refreshing, but let me see if I can do it this way.
Okay, so I'm gonna, and then 5. Okay, so I just put it in the chat. A lot of questions about the makeup of the team. You know, how to determine, how to, what would make a strong team.
There we go.
How's that team related to administrative support, that kind of thing. Second question has to do with gathering data on students, faculty. How do you do it in terms of privacy, or what happens if your college doesn't have the kind of data you want, that kind of thing. Third question has to do with supporting roles, especially with faculty who are not part of the team. If a college has a team that's chosen, you've got 30 faculty, 50 faculty might be interested. How do we have some ideas about keeping the participation of everyone going? And the fourth room would be supporting roles at the colleges without an active or chosen team. Ian mentioned that already. We want to talk about maintaining the momentum, because you're going through all of this work to do the application process, learn a lot about yourself. We don't want to just leave it right there. By the way, the first question had to do with writing centers as well. I think that would be our number 3 supporting roles. Writing centers would be obviously important in the makeup of an anti-racist writing assessment ecology. And so how do we maintain the participation and engagement of writing centers? That would probably be breakout room 3. And the 5th one is just nuts and bolts. There are a lot of questions about what do we mean by certain terms. The terms maybe can be a little bit large or vague, and those kinds of things, or other kinds of nuts and bolts things like 8 teams, 8 products, how many people on each product. Okay.
Let me just get the most recent version up on the screen. There we go. All
right. So if folks know how to rename themselves, I think it would be great if folks could rename themselves, and I put in a little example there. And I've been chatting offline with some of the folks from the core team. And so if you have a preference about which breakout room you'd like to lead, please let me know. And we will, and just give me a few minutes to organize everybody into breakout rooms.
Are you asking us to rename ourselves in the chat or where?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I'm sorry that I didn't put this as instructions in the slide deck. So there should be an option to, in your name, like to actually rename yourself. So if you click on more by your name in the chat, it'll say rename. And so if you could rename yourself, so I'm going to be, like, I would put number 1 by my name because I'd want to join breakout room number 1. Duval, did I answer your question? Or did I make more?
No, you did. I just didn't know what you were talking about. Looks like everybody else did.
And it won't be in the chat, it'll be in participants. So you have to go to participants and then more. And then, then I think that's where you would
Laura,
do it.
totally right. Sorry, Laura. Thank you. And Octaviano just wrote it in the chat. Thank you, everyone. Sorry, in the participants.
You can do it over your video too. If you hit the 3 dots above your video, there's an option to rename there as well.
And we're all
video square.
All right.
I'm working on it. More. Okay, profile. I'm gonna change my picture. Cancel.
Ian, have you renamed yourself?
I have not. I'll do it.
Okay.
I will take 4 as a big.
And if you don't want to do it, if you don't want to do a 1 by your name or a 2 or a 3, just put it in the chat and I'll look at it in the chat. And Holly, I am going to put Pierce into room 6. And thanks everybody for your patience. I get really nervous about breakout rooms. Okay. 6, 2, 6, 1. Almost done, everybody. Sorry. All right. I'm also just checking to make sure that we have I just want to make sure we have a facilitator in each room. All right, so when I move you, if you are not in the right room, just come back to the main room and I will move you into the right room. And I'll be in here the whole time. There's also a call for help button and I will fly to your rescue. So, and come and assist in any way that I can. And just checking one more time to make sure that everybody has a lead facilitator. All right, Jeff, I am gonna put you in breakout room number 6, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay. And other than that, I think every group has I think I have done this correctly. Are we ready? All right, I'm gonna open the rooms and I think it will give you 60 seconds to accept the invitation. And again, if you decide that you wanna float around, just come back and I will put you where you would like to go. And I, of course, will hang out here. Okay, thanks everybody.
Jen, is there a breakout room 6?
Yes, you haven't joined it yet. It's the Pierce group.
Hi, Jen.
Hi, is this Brian?
No, my name's Michael Ruby, and I'm with the Pierce group, but I appeared in breakout room 5.
And I see that you totally you're right. I see that you did that. I am so sorry.
No, that's not a problem. You had a lot to handle there, so I don't blame you.
All right, I just moved you, and so I think you should be ready to go. And
okay.
Now?
Yeah. Room 5. So.
Hi,
Jen. We're missing Jackie Kane. She should be in our group. So
I'll go back and find her and move her.
Thank you.
My pleasure. I'm always terrified when I do this. Like if I leave the room, will the whole thing shut down? Like,
right.
All right.
And
Stacy and I are very happy about this because it makes us feel better about our own processes in our classrooms lately. Like breakout rooms are scary.
we're also missing Nate Chang.
Nate?
So Jackie Chang and Nate Chang.
All right, I'll go find them. I will go find them.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Hey, hun, can you move me to room 1? Sorry.
You did. Of course. Sorry. Which room would you like to be in again?
I think my peeps are in room 1, and
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I put number 4 up originally. I put the wrong number up.
Well, it's great to see your beautiful face, and go join them, and I'll see you in a little bit.
Okay, thanks, hon.
Bye. Did that work? Ian. Hi, Laura. It's just the two of you, so I'm wondering if it's okay if I move you over because Laura only has one other person in hers. So can I move? Is it okay if we combine these so you guys can have a more full discussion?
Totally. Yeah, we're working on a couple of just technical issues right now. Let's see.
Just two of you? That's fine too.
Let me just ask, like, so Laura, which room is Laura's?
She's breakout room number 5.
Number 5, okay. I think, let's see. Tell you what, I think we're almost, let me hang here just for a moment and we'll come back to the main room.
Okay, and then I'll.
That sounds good, yeah.
All right, perfect. Okay, I'm gonna go back. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, totally.
Time, and hopefully we'll be able to apply to others. Like, how come this have a bigger impact? Jen, you're in the perfect space. We started by saying how cool it was that you created like the groups, the way that worked. That was beautiful. Like thank you.
Just stop it. Just stop it. It feels like cooking a really complicated meal where you're like, did it work? Like, do you like it? Is the dessert burned?
So Patrick had a good question, and I was saying that I was giving him my thoughts on it, but being mindful that I may not be speaking really for the entire group, just because I think that's something we're discussing now. And what Patrick was asking about was the kind of what's the selection process once all the teams have applied. And
we have not developed it yet.
Yeah. And my quick answer to that was really that we were looking at individually. I think some of the things we're looking at is teams that can show that they're really solid, like we sit together, that this is going to be an institutional thing and not like a one-person thing, professional development, but like that they have that capacity of like working. What do you say about that?
I would say I would say that's absolutely true. And Patrick, I think like we have asked all the department, we've asked all of the, it's a lot of information. It's going to be a lot of information not to weed through, but to work through, But I think the biggest piece for us was when we were trying to figure out like how many adjuncts should we have and which schools should be represented, like we just didn't have enough information to make those decisions. And so really like that's part of that labor-based process, is really trying to get a sense, not just of departments individually, which is true, right? Like, is this a department that is really ready to kind of like everything that Laura said beautifully. And then I would add that also thinking about what's the right makeup for the state. You know, like, are we representing, you know, like, for example, like if it's 6 big comprehensives on the I-5 corridor, you know, is that really representative of the state? And so part of the reason we're collecting all this information is to make a sense, is to just figure out, like, what does English instruction look like across the state, so that we can make the best decision about who are the right individuals to be building this curriculum. So it will really represent the needs of lots of different kinds of colleges and lots of different kinds of departments.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so the selection process, you really can't decide that until you know what you're selecting from. So that makes perfect sense.
There was so many. Yeah, go ahead.
It just raises such a huge question, right? If we're looking into anti-racist assessment, then how are you assessing the applications themselves? It becomes implicated in that. And so I was really curious if you guys had imagined what that looks like, but it sounds like I don't know, it's all very holistic, and it's a big process.
I have no idea, and I won't really know until we get them, because it's going to be so like there's lots of different things we could do, you know, like, but at this point I'm, you know, and given how much interest there is, I envision that it is going to be a big, Laura, I'm so sorry. It's going to be so much. It's going to be a big. Hey, I did want to ask you, so do the two of you want to stay in a smaller room, or do you want me to put you in a bigger room? Like, there's lots of people in room 1. I was just wondering if you want me to move you to a different room.
Yeah,
I'd be happy to move. I forget which number it is, but the one about gathering data, I'd love to hop over to that room.
I think
number 1.
Is that number 2?
Number 2. Sorry, yes, number 2.
Is it number 2?
Number 2.
Okay. So I will move you to breakout room number 2. Laura, where would you like to go?
I actually had thought about going to that one, but really wherever you feel like you would need me the most, I'd be good, honestly.
So I'm wondering if I could send you, if it's okay, could I send you to breakout room number 1?
Yeah, totally. Yep.
Thanks. Also, your hair looks amazing.
Thank you.
Oh my God, I'm in love with it. I'm in love and I'm jealous. Okay. All right. Okay, so I've just, Laura, I just moved Laura.
Hi, Laura.
It's like, all right, and Patrick, I'm gonna move you to 2. And if it's not the right room, just leave the room, come back to the main breakout, and I'll move you.
Sounds good. Thanks so much, Jen.
My pleasure. Hi, Anne.
So Laura was trying to get her audio to connect. I don't think she could hear, and so it just became me kind of waiting anxiously while I heard her rattling around with stuff and like talking to somebody in the house. I was like, I don't know if she realizes that I can hear this or not. So I just jumped out of that room, but it means that she's like the only one in room 4 right now.
I'll bring her back to the main room, and
okay.
But first, where would you like to go?
Does Laura still need some folks in 5?
No, we answered Patrick's question about how we're going to be responding to the grants, which was basically, we don't know yet. And, you know, like, and I just explained, you know, like why. And then, so breakout room 1 is pretty full. And so I moved Laura back to there, and Patrick wanted to go to 2, which is the data group. And I guess maybe, let me just look at the breakout rooms really quickly. So my thought is, My thought is that breakout room number 3 is pretty small. Breakout room number 6 is the Pierce group. Breakout room number 2 is pretty sizable. So do you think, would you rather go talk about data with Dutch, or would you rather talk about whatever breakout room 3 is with and support Tish?
I had one more idea too that
Yeah.
it might not work out, but I was thinking if the rooms wrap up at different times, we could basically bring the rooms in individually and close out with each breakout room, like let them head out a little bit early instead of waiting around. And so I could just kind of escort groups out as the conversations finish. But or I could, you know what I could do is I could jump into a room for now, and if a room is done and it looks like they don't really have anything else to talk about, if you just want to text me, I can like jump back in the main room and close things out for them.
My thought is, okay, I love that idea. And my thought is that maybe we give, like, you start floating in the rooms and see when they're wrapping up. And then if it looks like it's going to require a scaffolded stop, then let's do that. But if the groups are kind of going, what I'd like to do is come back and have different groups share out, like have each lead share out, like, what did you hear? Because I think it would be useful for, like, the Pierce team is all in a room together right now, but I think it might be interesting for them to hear what the other groups talked about.
That's a really good call. Yeah. So maybe we can, maybe we just keep the conversations, allow the conversations to go for a bit. And then we can, maybe if we make sure that everybody's back in here by 4:45 for closeout.
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Maybe, do you want me to I can send a broadcast to everybody and say we're estimating 4:45 for a stop time, or something like, I'm just thinking something like that. Like, but right now, what I like the idea of you doing is something that I do when Alyssa and I present. And if you click on breakout rooms, you might be able to see this. I'm not sure, but because you're a co-host, you might be able to just join rooms.
Okay, nice. Oh yes. Right now it just says you've been assigned to breakout room 4 when I click on breakout rooms.
All right, so what I'm gonna do then is I'm gonna move you to breakout room 1, and when you're ready to leave, text me and I'll move you to breakout room number 2, and maybe you just kind of listen and just kind of get a sense of what's happening in all the groups, and then you can come back and say, yes, it looks like 4:45 is gonna be the right stop time.
That's a great call. Okay.
All right, I'm gonna move you to breakout room 1 and text me when you're ready to go to breakout room 2.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. Thanks again.
Yeah, totally. Oh.
Did it not work? Oh.
Yeah. Hey, Jen.
Hey, I'm just kind of lurking just to see how groups are doing, just to think about timing and stuff. Hi, everyone.
Sure. So there was a question, Jen, that maybe you could respond to as well.
Yeah.
About the portion of the BIPOC-centered policies of the application.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So I meant to reach out to Asao and ask for clarification, because Asao is the one who did a lot of the heavy lift on this. And actually, do you mind, I haven't, where is that in the labor instructions? Is it under faculty supporting students?
It's in the understanding the course section, but we had talked about that. This is my recollection of our conversation. We had talked about that sort of everywhere from classroom policies to hiring practices to larger conversations on your campus about equity and equitable outcomes in BIPOC-centered policies. So that was that was my recollection of our work on that section, that it really could be, if a department has had conversations about that in any way, they could share that. So it could be something in the classroom, or it could be hiring or other things, right?
I guess I was also thinking about Asau's work when he was at UW-Tacoma with the Writing Center. And I don't know if any of you had a chance to ever, like, I just remember there was like a lot of press around it because it was explicitly focused, he didn't, the language like around BIPOC didn't exist at that time, but it was very much about like, correctness and standard written English is not the focus of this writing center, and it's not the focus of this writing department. I think a very BIPOC focused statement would be the most recent statement from the Cs on linguistic justice. Clark and Highline, I think both have just developed actual department policies around anti-racism. So I think maybe, yeah, just kind of thinking about those kinds of things, you know, and also like what, again, like the question around like some of the things to me are maybe more on the appearance. They have the appearance of being neutral, and they're not, like how many students are placed by AccuPlacer, for example. Like AccuPlacer might be facially neutral, but actually does have deep disparate, or could potentially have deep disparate impact. And so I think just kind of looking at like, like I know that North has worked very hard on using directed self-placement. And so, and looking at that with an equity lens. So I feel like describing maybe your DSP process might be useful for this. Is this making sense?
Yes, I think so. I think maybe it was just me, but I think because it was understanding the course, I got a little confused in terms of, are you looking at actual individual instructor, like going to individual instructors and saying, hey, what have you done within your particular class and the policies in your syllabus, for example, that center, you know, BIPOC students. And so that was a little confusing for me.
That makes perfect sense. And if you don't mind, can I practice my soapbox? Like, can I practice my what I'm excited about this grant? Because I think for a long time, like, and this is higher ed writ large, right? Like, we've always approached it from and we've especially approached faculty professional development from a very individualistic lens, like my class, my student. Like, if I go to faculty professional development, it's about improving my class. And it wasn't until like I'd been at the state board maybe 3 years when I can't remember exactly what the transformative moment was, when I was like, you know, it maybe wasn't the best idea that I just made up my own plagiarism statement and never ever looked at the department plagiarism statement, you know, like about that collective piece. And I do think, you know, there's a lot of inherent systemic racism in policy, in department policies, with no judgment, just a lot of us have racist policies in our plagiarism statement. And so how are we recentering plagiarism statements, for example, is the kind of thing I'm really interested in this grant maybe leading to, you know, not in the first year, but in future subsequent years, really getting more consensus as a state about, like, yeah, so.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. So, I mean, that does bring to mind all of this kind of shared syllabus language that they say, hey, put this in, you need to have it, right? So part of the question is, have we as a department had conversations about that?
Yes.
Right? Yep, got it.
Yeah. Isn't it fun? Don't you love this? Isn't it the best?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, can you not wait for your next department meeting? Oh my gosh, I am such a loser. So how are you doing on time? Do you think you need more time? I'm just sort of trying to check in. We're thinking about a 4:45, come back to the large group, and each group kind of share back, like, here's what we talked about.
I think
we might need more than 15 minutes for that, Jen.
I think we were able to get our questions answered, I think. Is that right, Laura and Kat, I think? Yeah.
It's so nice to see all of you. I miss you.
Patrick joined Lee and then Jeanette. Did you have questions?
No, I was just lurking. Great stuff. And it answered questions I didn't know I had. So thank you all.
Yeah, that was great. I got most of my questions answered.
I'm going to jump back to the main room because I think someone is calling me.
We could use some of those other opportunities like guided pathway funding to use some of those funds to support some supplemental work in addition to those working on the core team. I feel like I'm missing stuff. Sherry, do you want to add anything?
No, I don't think so. I think you got it. That was one of the key things is what you said about guided pathways funding.
Yeah.
And we just talked about writing center people being poised to knowing student need so well from our daily work. So
yeah,
we all
how does that translate here?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone applauds writing centers. No, I'm serious. Like Sherry, sorry, I got really excited and then I cut you off, but like writing center pedagogy is it, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm just gonna write that. Writing center pedagogy is it.
So in the interest of time, I know that, so I think group 4 and group 5 got folded into other groups, and group 6 was Pierce. They're talking through their own work. So I wonder if we should just go to the last 2 slides and just to wrap us up.
Yes, would you like me to stop sharing or would you like me to go to the slides for you?
Why don't you just take the slides and then we can, that's probably the most efficient way to do it. And we'll just do it, we'll just be cash here. So and this is really,
nope. Wrong.
If you just want, there we go. And so let's just linger on this one. We've got, so we've got 3 more of these Q&A sessions. Some of them might have more formal content, some might be more casual talks. If you'd like more help, please feel free to come to them. We'll be sending announcements out through the Decomposing English 101 Canvas shell. The recordings of this and other grant materials are all available in that Canvas shell as well. And let me post a link to that shell in the chat. Lastly, if you'd like one of the core team to help your institution out as you're working through this application, just email Jen and she can connect your team with one of us. We'll be available for email. You can meet with folks on your team as well, whatever's going to be the most helpful. I want to thank you all for taking time out of your Friday to meet with us and to talk us through. We're really, really excited about this grant and we can't wait to see what comes of it. So if you've got further questions, if your question wasn't answered, please feel free to hit any of us up. We're in the Decomposing shell. I think, Jen, if it's okay, if they can forward questions to you, we can take those on as well. So thanks very much, folks. Enjoy your weekend. Try to get whatever lingering sunshine is still out there, and we'll see you in another session soon.
Thanks to all of you for coming. Thank you, Ian, for facilitating today. And yeah, sorry, this is just really beautiful that you're all willing to just be here on a Friday afternoon with all of us. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to stop the record.